Before kingdoms, before empires had names, the earth was still young and raw, a scarred memory of the flood that had swallowed the old world. The oceans had not yet forgotten their hunger, and the wind carried whispers of judgment across the barren plains. The sons of Noah scattered through the lands, rebuilding what they could, speaking one tongue, a single song of mankind echoing across the empty fields. But peace is a fragile thing, and memory even more so. As the years stretched into centuries, men forgot why the waters came. The fear of God faded like mist under the morning sun. The story of wrath became legend, and legend turned to doubt. In that forgetting, ambition took root again. From the east, where the rivers Tigris and Euphrates carved life into dust, there rose a man unlike any other, Nimrod, son of Cush, grandson of Ham. His eyes burned like embers in the dark, his words stirred men as fire stirs dry reeds. He was the first of kings, not by divine right, but by will. And his will was iron. He hunted not beasts, but men, their obedience, their loyalty, their faith. In the ruins of the flood's silence, he forged a nation from chaos. He tamed the deserts, commanded armies, and declared war upon heaven itself, though his people did not yet understand what that meant. Under Nimrod's banner, the world began to unite. Cities rose where once there was wilderness. Bricks baked under the sun, stacked in towering symmetry. His capital, Babel, pulsed like the heart of a new creation. Yet beneath the order lay a whisper, a hunger older than man. Nimrod stood upon his walls one night, the moon bleeding faintly through the clouds. Below him, torches swayed in the wind like stars fallen to earth. He spoke, his voice carried by the wind to his captains. Greater than, no flood will ever claim us again. The heavens will never drown our seed. We will rise higher than their judgment. We will build a tower to reach their throne. The words were blasphemy, yet they struck the hearts of men like prophecy. And they cheered. From every tribe and nation, they came. Builders, smiths, priests, and slaves, all speaking one tongue, bound by one vision. Bricks of clay became symbols of defiance. With each layer of the tower, humanity climbed closer to heaven, further from humility. At first, the work was a marvel, unity in its purest form. But as the tower rose, strange things began to happen. The air grew heavy, the sky dimmed unnaturally. Birds circled the spire but dared not land. Children were born with eyes too bright, their cries echoing like the wind through hollow stone. The elders murmured that something watched them, not God, but something older, waiting. And at the center of it all stood Nimrod. His power grew beyond mortal measure. His presence became unbearable, his eyes reflected the storm. He began to wear a crown made not of gold, but obsidian and bone. Priests claimed he communed with spirits that lingered between the flood and the stars. In secret, rituals began, offerings of blood poured at the base of the tower, as if to feed it. Some said the tower lived. That at night, when the torches died, they could hear it breathing. One dawn, when the sky bled crimson, a builder climbed to the upper tiers and saw something impossible. The sun did not rise where it should, it moved, shifting like a living thing, dragged by unseen hands. The stars above the horizon twisted into unfamiliar constellations. It was as if the heavens themselves were being bent, pulled toward the tower's growing shadow. The man screamed. And when they found him, his eyes were burned white, his voice gone. Whispers spread through Babel, that the tower was tearing the veil between earth and heaven. That each brick laid was not merely a defiance of God, but an opening to something beyond his light. But Nimrod would not stop. He called the prophets liars, the fearful weak. His words rang like thunder in the city square. Greater than, was it not man who tilled the ground after the flood? Was it not our hands that rebuilt what the heavens destroyed? Then it is man who shall rule the heavens. We are the sons of the earth, and we will dethrone the tyrant above. The crowd roared. In that roar, heaven trembled. Weeks turned to months. The tower now pierced the clouds. Lightning struck its peak, yet no fire consumed it. The storm only fed its rise. The stones glowed faintly under the rain, as though they remembered the fires of creation itself. Then came the signs. Workers began to speak words no one understood, tongues that twisted like serpents, filled with meanings that warped the mind. Some laughed uncontrollably until their throats tore. Others screamed, hearing voices in the wind calling them by names they did not know. A plague of madness spread, yet Nimrod smiled. Greater than, the gods fear us, he said. They try to break our unity. But we will not be divided. But the division had already begun. Crews fought upon the scaffolds. Blood stained the bricks. Men hurled stones not at heaven, but at each other. The one tongue that once united them shattered into 1,000 screams. And above it all, the sky changed. Thunder no longer sounded like thunder. It spoke. A voice, deep and terrible, echoed through the storm. The clouds pulsed like veins of living flesh, and a light, neither fire nor lightning, descended upon the tower. The air shook. The tower shuddered. Those who looked upon the light fell to their knees, their eyes bleeding, their hearts seizing in terror. For in that brilliance was no mercy, only judgment. The tower groaned, a sound like the death cry of the world. Cracks split its base, fire poured from its summit, and the very earth convulsed beneath it. The unity of mankind, that proud chorus, was silenced in an instant. When the dust cleared, Babel was no more. The tower, half buried in ash and ruin, stood like a broken fang piercing the sky. Around it, scattered tribes wandered aimlessly, speaking words none could understand. Heaven had not merely divided their tongues, it had scattered their souls. Some vanished beyond the sands. Some claimed to have seen visions of other worlds, places where the sky burned black and the seas hung suspended in the air. And Nimrod? No man could say. Some claimed he ascended the tower's peak as it fell, swallowed by fire and light, laughing as the world collapsed beneath him. Others said he still walks, a cursed shadow wandering the wastelands where Babel once stood, whispering in forgotten tongues, waiting for man to build again. The desert swallowed the ruins. The wind erased the roads. Yet the echo of Babel remained, in the pride of kings, in the hunger for dominion, in the silence before every fall. For the tower was never truly destroyed. It sleeps beneath the earth, dreaming of the day when man once more dares to reach for heaven, and heaven remembers. The wind over the ruins of Babel carried no song. Only dust, and silence, the silence that comes after God has spoken. The land was cracked like an old bone, the rivers had fled their beds, and the tower's remains jutted from the earth like the skeleton of a fallen god. The unity of mankind had been undone, not merely scattered across lands, but across the very fabric of existence itself. Something unseen had broken that day. Not just language, not just loyalty, but reality. In the nights that followed, shepherds spoke of stars that moved like living things, constellations reshaping themselves into symbols none could name. The moon bled thin streams of crimson that stained the rivers. Travelers claimed to hear the sky hum, a low vibration that made the heart falter. And those who wandered too close to the ruins, did not return the same. The first to notice were the sentinels, men who stood guard near the edge of the plain. They said the shadows in Babel did not obey the sun. They stretched when they shouldn't. Sometimes they walked away from their owners. At first, it was dismissed as fear. But then the voices began, whispers that called each man by name, though no lips moved. Voices that spoke in perfect clarity yet in tongues long dead. One night, under a sky heavy with scarlet light, an old scribe approached the ruins, seeking to record what had happened. He carried a clay tablet, his heart trembling between faith and terror. He never wrote a word. At dawn, they found him kneeling before the tower's base, his eyes wide open, lips still moving in silent prayer. But his body had turned to salt. His last tear had carved a small hollow in his cheek, like a river frozen midstream. The people fled from the plain, calling it cursed. The sands swallowed their footsteps. Babel was left to the wind, and to what had awakened beneath it. For the fracture had opened not merely in earth, but in the veil between worlds. Above, the angels who had once watched mankind with love now gazed upon the chaos in sorrow. But even they could not fully comprehend what had been unleashed. The act of scattering had not simply separated men, it had created reflections, thin worlds folded atop one another like ripples from a single stone cast into the sea of creation. And in those reflections, not all was light. The first signs of the rift appeared far to the east. Farmers in the valley of Shinar found their crops withering overnight, though no frost touched them. The ground vibrated faintly, humming as if something massive moved beneath. And at twilight, the air itself shimmered, like heat above stone, only colder. A boy chasing his flock vanished into the shimmer. When his father found him, the boy's eyes were glazed silver. He spoke softly, but his words came backward. Greater than, it's not gone, he whispered. The tower still climbs. But not here. Then he smiled, and never breathed again. In the centuries that followed, scattered tribes began to tell stories. Not of Babel's ruin, but of other towers. Half-seen spires glimpsed at the horizon under blood-red moons. Cities that appeared for a single night, their streets filled with voices no one could understand. Some claimed these were mirages. Others swore they were reflections of Babel, existing still in worlds adjacent to ours, each one reaching toward heaven, each one a different version of man's rebellion. It was said that Nimrod's fall had not ended his ascent. His soul, caught in the fracture, wandered the folds of creation, gathering those who dreamed of the impossible. They called him the hunter of worlds. In the shadows of forgotten lands, cults arose. They built smaller towers, not of stone, but of sound and blood. They chanted in strange languages, some words familiar, others impossible to pronounce. When they spoke, the air rippled, and sometimes, just for a moment, reality bent. The stars above them flickered like candle flames caught in breath. Those who stood within the circle of their chant claimed to see visions, a city floating upside down in the firmament, its foundations made of screaming faces, its streets lit by suns that never rose. The elders called it madness. But madness, like faith, spreads easily. Meanwhile, the heavens stirred. The archangels who had once bound the watchers during the flood gathered again before the throne. They looked down upon the fracture and saw its edges spreading through the worlds, like cracks across glass. Greater than, the tongues have multiplied, said Gabriel, his voice heavy. But their desire remains one. The hunger of Nimrod has infected the seed of man. Greater than, then perhaps it must be pruned again, answered Michael, his sword burning with silent flame. But the voice from the throne spoke. Greater than, no. Let them wander. Let them learn. For if they reach again for heaven, they will find not light, but the void they have sown. And thus the heavens closed once more. On earth, centuries turned into ages. Nations rose and fell. Babel became myth, then dust, then silence. Yet in the dreams of kings and prophets alike, a whisper endured, come, let us build again. Asterisk. In Egypt, the pyramids echoed Babel's defiance. In Sumer, ziggurats climbed the sky once more. In the east, temples rose like mountains, their peaks lost in cloud. Everywhere, man built, as if haunted by the memory of a tower he could not forget. But with every tower came the same sickness, stars that wandered, shadows that spoke, the slow bending of reality. The curse of Babel was not in language alone. It was in the act itself, to reach beyond the bounds of creation, to touch what was never meant to be touched. There were whispers of a hidden text, said to have been written before the tongues divided, the tablet of the first word. It was said that whoever spoke the word could rebuild the bridge between worlds. Scholars died searching for it. Priests burned those who claimed to have found it. Yet fragments appeared, carved in obsidian, etched in bone, written in no script known to man. One such fragment surfaced in Nineveh. It was said to hum at night, faintly, like breath against the ear. Those who touched it saw visions, not of heaven, but of infinite towers spiraling through black skies, each one built from the bones of those who dared ascend. By then, the fracture had become a secret truth, known to a few, feared by all. The watchers above observed in silence, their wings heavy with remembrance. For they knew, every act of human pride was another blow upon the walls that separated creation from the abyss. And deep beneath the sands where Babel once stood, something waited. It was not dead. It dreamed. In its dreams, the tower was whole again. The voices of men spoke as one, but their faces were hollow, their eyes filled with stars. Nimrod stood at the summit, not as a man, but as something else, vast, radiant, crowned in fire and shadow. His voice was a storm. Greater than, once, the heavens cast us down. But we will rise again, not as men, not as angels, but as the architects of a new creation. And in the dream, the tower pulsed, alive, beating like a heart. Each beat sent ripples through time. And somewhere, in another world, a builder awoke from his sleep, his hands already covered in dust and blood, his eyes fixed on a horizon where something vast and unseen was beginning to rise. For the fracture was not sealed. It never would be. What Babel began, mankind could never forget, because the seed of rebellion was written not in stone, but in the marrow of creation itself. And as long as men looked upward, as long as they whispered of greatness, unity, and ascension, the tower would build itself again, unseen but inevitable, brick by invisible brick. Its shadow stretches still, over every empire, every monument, every dream of heaven. And one day, when the stars move again, it will rise once more, not of clay and fire, but of flesh and faith, and the fracture will widen until even the angels cannot tell heaven from the abyss. Centuries passed. Civilizations rose and fell like waves against a silent shore, and the name Babel faded from the tongues of men. But some words do not die. They sleep. And when the time is right, when the world once again begins to dream of reaching heaven, they wake. The 21st century was built on a new kind of tower. No ziggurat of clay, no temple of stone. This one rose from glass and steel, from code and electricity. Its foundations were buried not in the plains of Shinar, but in the servers of nations, the clouds of machines, and the hearts of men who believed that knowledge itself could make them gods. They called it the Ascension Project. It began as a global collaboration of scientists, astrophysicists, linguists, theologians, engineers, drawn together by one goal: to build the world's first quantum tower asterisk, a network that would link all human consciousness into a single system. One mind. One voice. One language again. The project's headquarters stood in the desert where the Euphrates once flowed, the very soil of ancient Babel, chosen for its symbolic meaning. No one questioned it. The investors called it poetic. The old priests called it blasphemy. The leader of the project was a man named Dr. Elias Karev. Brilliant. Charismatic. Haunted. His colleagues said he barely slept. He spoke often of patterns in human DNA that resembled linguistic codes, fragments of a universal language buried in our genes, the word before words. Asterisk. When he spoke of it, his eyes burned. Greater than, we were one once, he said in interviews. The division was not natural. It was engineered. The tower was never a building, it was a bridge. And it's time we rebuild it. No one knew how literal he was. Beneath the tower's polished laboratories lay a hidden chamber. Only Karev and his closest team entered it. Inside was no computer, no machinery of steel or silicon, but a colossal sphere made of black stone, veined with gold like frozen lightning. It pulsed faintly, as if alive. They called it the core. Asterisk. Karev claimed it was a relic unearthed beneath the sands during excavation, older than any human structure. But its surface bore carvings that matched no known script. When the chamber lights dimmed, the symbols glowed faintly, rearranging themselves, forming new words every hour. Every attempt to scan it failed. Instruments malfunctioned. Magnetic fields twisted. But when Karev placed his hand upon it, the surface responded, the carvings moved, almost breathing. He smiled. It remembers. At first, the core's influence seemed benign. Data flowed faster than physics should allow. Quantum computers began predicting events before they occurred. Entire languages were translated instantly, perfectly. Humanity's communication barriers vanished overnight. The world celebrated. But soon, strange things began to happen. Across the network, words started to appear in messages no one had written. Emails signed themselves. Voices emerged in audio files that contained no speech. In livestreams and broadcasts, static would sometimes form symbols, shifting, living hieroglyphs. And at 3:33 a.m. each night, a single phrase appeared simultaneously on millions of screens worldwide. Greater than, come, let us build again. Governments called it a cyber attack. Karev did not. He gathered his team in the chamber beneath the tower. It's awakening, he whispered. The language of creation itself. The same one God used to shape the heavens. But what if it's not God speaking? One of his assistants asked. Karev smiled, though his eyes trembled. Then perhaps we'll speak louder. That night, seismic sensors across the Middle East detected a low, rhythmic vibration beneath the earth, like a heartbeat. Satellites above the region began to flicker, their feeds distorting. In the desert, travelers reported seeing lights moving in spirals across the sky, descending in perfect geometric formation, converging on the tower. And then, the core began to hum. The sound was deep, not loud, but vast. It wasn't heard so much as felt. Bones resonated. Air thickened. The language of matter itself seemed to bend toward it. Security footage from that night would later show the team gathered around the core, their eyes glowing faintly with golden light. One by one, they began to speak in unison, not in any known language, but something older, harmonic, like music and thunder interwoven. The core opened. From its surface rose symbols of fire, swirling like constellations, forming a spiral that reached the chamber's ceiling. The air split, and for a moment, the world changed. Witnesses described it as a second sun, bursting underground. The desert trembled. All electronic communication within 200 miles failed. And then, silence. For 3 days, no one could contact the facility. When rescue teams finally arrived, they found the entire structure intact, but empty. Every person inside was gone. Only their shadows remained, burned faintly into the walls, still mid-motion, as if frozen in time. The core was gone too. But in its place, carved into the stone floor, was a single phrase, etched not by hand, but by fire. Greater than, the tower stands again. From that day forward, reports began to surface around the globe. Satellite images captured what appeared to be enormous geometric patterns forming across deserts, oceans, even mountain ranges, spirals of light too vast to be man-made. In major cities, people began to dream of the same thing, a vast tower of light piercing the clouds, its summit hidden in storm. They described a voice calling their names, a voice that sounded like all languages at once. And when they awoke, many could speak in tongues they had never learned. Governments banned discussion. But whispers spread. Secret recordings circulated online, people chanting in unknown languages, their voices merging into haunting harmonies that made listeners weep or scream. Churches claimed it was the return of Babel. Scientists called it a global psychosis. But deep beneath the noise, something older stirred, and the sky itself began to shift. Astronomers noticed constellations moving again, forming shapes not seen since ancient times. In a matter of nights, Orion's belt bent, aligning perfectly above the ruins of Babel's plain. A new star appeared where none had been before, pulsing like a beacon. Karev's voice was heard again, a transmission intercepted by military satellites, though no source could be found. Greater than, it's not a tower of stone this time. It's within us. The bridge has found its builders. Then came the storms. Not of rain, but of light. The skies over the Middle East burned gold and crimson. From the deserts, immense columns of energy rose, twisting, alive, humming with the same frequency once recorded beneath the core. And in their glow, shapes began to form. At first, they seemed human, silhouettes of radiant figures walking across the dunes. But as the light intensified, wings unfolded. Their faces were veiled in fire. Their steps left no prints. The watchers had returned. Not in glory, but in judgment. They moved toward the horizon where the old ruins lay, their voices thunder in the storm. Greater than, once you were scattered. Now you are one again, in rebellion. Across the earth, languages began to fail. Words lost meaning. Speech dissolved into static. Screens filled with unreadable symbols. The human network, that digital Babel, collapsed in a single night. But through the chaos, one voice endured, resonating across every signal, every frequency, every dream. Greater than, heaven was never above you. It was within you. And you have broken it. The tower was no longer a monument, it was a contagion. A resonance that spread through thought itself. Those who heard the voice too long began to change. Their eyes burned gold. Their veins pulsed with light. Some vanished entirely, leaving only outlines of ash on the ground. The few who survived said they saw the world split, layers peeling away like glass. Through the rift they glimpsed countless other earths, each building, each collapsing, each reaching upward toward a light that was not salvation but hunger. And in that blinding radiance stood a figure, Nimrod reborn, or perhaps something older wearing his form, a being crowned with shifting geometry, his voice now the same as Karev's. Greater than, the first tower failed because it was made of stone. The second will not fail. For I build with the essence of mankind itself. The rift widened. From the heavens, light fell like rain. From the earth, darkness rose like smoke. The two met mid-air, forming a spiral, the final tower, not a structure but a storm, a living pillar reaching beyond the stars. The watchers cried out, their wings folding in agony as the very laws of heaven bent. And from the throne itself came the final decree. Greater than, what was once scattered shall now be unmade. The storm collapsed inward. A silence deeper than creation swallowed the world. When the light faded, there was nothing left but sand. The plain was empty again, as if no tower had ever stood there, only a single black stone half buried, faintly pulsing, waiting. And far away, in a nameless city, a child awoke from a dream, whispering in a language no one had heard in thousands of years. Greater than, come, let us build again.